Welcome back to another episode of Dungeon Hammer, brought to you by One Mind Syndicate. I am Gersh1, and I'm here with my two co-hosts.
Docile creature.
So really said it with your chest there.
That's right.
Damn, how do I?
My nipples are hard.
Damn, I can't. Do anything after that. So I'm the Sound Alchemist.
A wholesome name. Today we're going to be talking about how to be the best DM. And I think this is a good topic because I just got off of DMing for both of these guys. So I'm just going to tell you guys everything that I did wrong, so what you should do the opposite of. Starting with, in order to be the best DM, you need to be prepared. That is something that I have not mastered yet. It seems like I'm always underprepared for what the party actually encounters. And a good DM is someone that can think on their toes and seems to portray like oh, you did this? Yeah, I knew you were going to do that. I have this prepared for you. So if they run an encounter, that encounter always has a purpose, it seems. Where I don't think I have mastered that. But would you guys agree with me saying that being prepared is probably one of the key?
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah,
but at the same time, I feel like the other half to that is you can be over prepared and have too much ready, and then your party just goes a completely different route, and all those hours and hours of work are just going to waste.
Absolutely, it's a balance. But as the players, Sound Alchemist and I, did you feel like he was not prepared?
Because a little bit. I'm not gonna lie, I
Okay.
did. I noticed a lot of ums and like pauses to think whenever we would do things, and I think those were clear indications of, oh, I didn't expect this. Yeah. Not necessarily he's not prepared, but he wasn't ready for this outcome.
Yeah. Okay, maybe I just didn't notice it, or I just don't remember noticing it because it seemed fine to me. But
no, I think I caught on those cues because it's like he gave us the way I felt that the sessions went. They were very open-ended and not very railroady, and I think because of that also played on the unpreparedness section of it, because if it's very open-ended, you're not going to be expecting whatever the party decides to do unless you have a clear, concise railroad. And I feel like railroading versus open-ended is a whole nother topic we can get into.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But for your session, though, it was fun, but I did pick up on those slight little, like, oh, I didn't expect this. I got to think of something quick. And because of that kind of led the party to a different route than what you were expecting.
Yeah, and I think a good DM or the best DM does a really good job of just blurring out that line. Like they basically, to the point where like when Docile Creature was DMing for us, I felt like whatever we would do,
he was ready.
He just looked at us like, okay, I knew you guys were going to do
it's
that.
It's like, oh, you're doing this? All right.
Yeah, and I think, and I honestly think that is a good poker face.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So a good DM or the best DM has a really good poker face.
Right.
I think it's...
Go ahead.
Well, I think it's just a balance between preparation and another skill that all the best DMs have is being able to improvise.
Yes.
If you can't improvise, then you're going to have to prepare to kind of make up for that, and that's how you kind of fall into the trap of over-preparing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if you have a decent amount of preparation, you don't have to prepare every little thing, but you also have some decent improvisation skills, then that's really all a great DM needs.
Right. A poker face and good improvisation skills really can turn the tide from like making you feel like, oh shit, I don't know anything, or yeah, I got this.
Yeah.
How do you think you would practice that? Like what?
Improv?
Yeah.
Watch a lot of Wild and Out. Because as much as I say it's improv, I think they got some stuff ready.
But only the ones with, what's his name? Cat Williams?
Cat Williams. Oh, you're going back like 10 years ago.
Yeah. But yeah, so what do you do then to make it seem so like integrated into just the way you respond to
when
things?
You're writing your sessions, like you're like, okay, so at this point the party can go anyway. How do you prepare for that?
I don't really prepare for everything. I just I have situations where I think the party will do, but I'm never like, this is what they're going to do for sure. And another thing that I like to do is I like to flesh out my world a lot. So if you guys decide to go in a completely different direction, I have that part of the world semi fleshed out, or I know enough about it that I can kind of bullshit or improvise. So if you know your setting and you know enough about the adventure you're running or whatever, that you're comfortable enough for them to go off the rails, and you know it's there when whatever direction they go, then you can use your improvisation skills. Yeah, that word is hard to say. Improvisation skills, and kind of just make shit up as they.
Essentially, it's like a get out of jail free card. It's like, okay, so they can take this anywhere, but I've got this one scene or one scenario that's going to round them back up and get them back on this railroad.
Mm-hmm. And I think what I think I want to do, and then I'm going to steal from what you just said, is the idea of like actually figuring out what the goal of my world is. So like if you guys talk to the blacksmith, I need to know who the blacksmith is, what his character is like. So if the sound alchemist decides to kill his horse, which he didn't, another player did that, then I know how he would react to that. So fleshing out characters, like you said, your world, is something that I think I need to do. And not look at things as like A and B encounters, and look at it more as like you are interacting with this character that I already know how he would act.
Mm-hmm. And you don't even have to say, oh, if they go to this town, there's this blacksmith. You can just have a character of a blacksmith in your head, and you can put it in front of them wherever town they go to.
Right.
Oh, okay.
So you don't have to say, okay, if they go to this town, they go this blacksmith.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times when I have ideas for characters, I'll just write down a brief description of what that character is, so I can put it anywhere in my world, unless they fit a very specific place. But then even then, they don't have to go in a specific city or whatever. They can go the whole. If it's a high elf blacksmith or whatever, they can be anywhere within the high elf territory or whatever.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And not just that, but I think just knowing your characters and how they're going to react to certain situations really benefits the DM. Because session 0, as much as we don't have these, I feel like they're very important.
Yeah.
Because when you're fleshing out your character, you could say, oh, docile creature's character is going to be very inquisitive. So knowing that, you can put just a small inkling of a mystery, and you can kind of assume that his character would pick up on that.
Or even like not necessarily have to go full-fledged mystery, but put things in there to succeed in certain scenarios that don't involve combat, that kind of play to the inquisitive nature of your character.
Right.
That brings up another good point then. So in your guys' opinion, the best DM, do you think he creates a world for his players, or he creates a world and just allows the players to interact with it? Like, is he tailoring the world to the actual player, and playing favorites, or is he just doing a different route, I guess?
In my experience, this might be the wrong answer, but I don't know. This is just how I've ever done it. I create worlds that I would want to play in, and then I just kind of put my players into the worlds that I've made for me, basically. Because I really enjoy world building.
Yeah.
And I like seeing how like people play in my sandbox, basically, like what people do in certain places and certain situations, what are the current events, and like how they react to them is what gets me off as a DM.
Whoa.
Yeah, I really like your sandbox. Like, it's not very thick, but it's very long.
And it's coarse sand.
It is it gets everywhere. I like it. Having sand bits in places you never thought existed is a different feeling.
Is this sand sticky?
Sometimes.
Gross.
In certain spots.
Yeah. But yeah, that's exactly the way I make my campaigns, which, I don't know, because I feel like if you're making a whole world based on what you like, that might not be what the party likes, and that may lead to a whole different aspect that you might not be ready for, especially if you're a new DM.
I feel like, in my experience, if they get to create their characters,
right,
I get to create the world how I wanna. Because if I'm running a game in a world that I don't really care
then
about, or I don't like,
invested in it.
Yeah, I'm not gonna be as excited, or I'm not gonna be motivated to prepare every week, because it's like, oh, we're playing in whatever world that I didn't make. I didn't really care about all that much. I don't like the aesthetic or whatever. So when you make your world how you would want to play in it, I mean,
that's like saying I don't like horror movies, but I'm the DM in a horror campaign.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're not going to be as like stoked to play as everybody else.
Yeah, you might not get the whole like eerie feel, like, oh, here comes Jason, instead of describing the whole.
Yeah.
Wow, I just goosebumps right now.
And you might not have the motivation to like go the extra step and like the music, the lighting, the candles, which we talked about before, do all that kind of stuff if you're just like, oh, it's just a horror campaign.
Right, but the thing is, though, if you're trying to go all out with like the atmosphere, the lights, the candles, and all this, if this is going to be a year-long campaign, that's a lot to maintain throughout session after session after session. I feel like if you're going all out, it's best to do it in a short campaign. That way, if you're like 6 sessions in and they've seen all the like the scratch and sniffs, the getting a little spray bottle out and spraying people when it's raining, it's like, okay, we're in session 6 and like I've run out of gimmicks. It's just a regular bland campaign now. And it's like your party's not gonna really enjoy that anymore.
Yeah, but I guess that's a point that the best of the best DMs kind of go the extra mile and don't just narrate. They got mood as well.
Yeah. Think of it as your party going through a haunted house. You're going through all these crazy, scary rooms, and then you come to one room where it's just bland. It's like, no, you gotta keep it going.
And it doesn't even have to just be horror. It could be like whatever.
Yeah.
If they're on a ocean, have like ocean wave sound in the background, and like turn the lights a little blue or something like that.
Yeah. How do you do that? Turn the lights a little blue.
You say,
hue
Alexa.
lights. Yeah, exactly.
So how do you guys then deal with, like, let's say you do create a super epic story arc, and then the next one comes around. Do you guys just try to one-up the one that you just did?
I think
in order to be the best?
To be a good DM, my advice is to always try to best yourself from the last adventure or the last session.
Yeah.
Because if you feel like you're not up to par, then I think that those emotions get kind of put into the atmosphere that you're putting out for the party, and they're going to catch on to that. Because when I was making my first encounters for the two of you, I wanted to go all out. And then the next session, it's like, okay, well, how do I, bring this session even better? And then that just made me to create more creative ways, bringing in people from other D&D campaigns into the session and surprising you with a new character, like stuff like that. And I feel like eventually it just snowballs to this whole grand, end session that's really going to stick in the minds of your players. And I think that's how you get people to like D&D. You slowly improve yourself as you improve the session, and that's how D&D becomes this like grand adventure.
Okay.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But I also think it's important for DMs to realize that there's going to be like
ups and downs.
Yeah,
it's a roller coaster. It's not
like you're not going to be able to completely have a steady incline of excitement the whole way through, because some sessions are just going to be in town and they're just going to mess around. They're going to want to buy stuff. They're going to want to do all this stuff that you didn't you don't plan for it because it's just pretty simple stuff, but it might take half the session or the whole session or whatever. So it's I like the advice to try to always better yourself as a DM. Definitely.
Now, is that bettering yourself through your eyes, or do you actually ask your players at the end of every session, so how did I do?
I think you should do that. You should keep in contact with your players, making sure they're enjoying what you're doing, and if you ask that question, be prepared for criticism, and as a player, don't be a dick about it. Just kind of like say what they did wrong or something that you'd want to see done differently in a productive way, so that everybody's cool with it. Yeah,
and I think that's the one thing you have to remember, is that this is a group game. What you might really want to be doing isn't necessarily what the whole group wants, and there's a lot of give and take in this. It's like a relationship. It's like, yeah, I could go out and get a whole pizza for myself, but it's like I go home and there's going to be a meal cooked for me. It's like, oh, if I'm not hungry, how is this going to affect the other people? You also got to think about it that way. It's like, yeah, I can go out to this cave where I'm fighting like dragons and all these monsters, but what if the rest of the team wants to go shopping?
Yeah.
It's like, what do I do? Make myself happy or make the whole group happy?
Right, as a player, but as a DM, in order to be the best DM,
you have to be very intuitive on people's thoughts and emotions and
would
stuff
you
like
guys be against just kind of feeling out the party and not actually having
like a Harvey Weinstein type of thing?
Yeah, just like touching them when they're asleep.
Is that what happened?
Yeah, I don't know. But like in a situation of like just not actually like after the session asking them like, oh, how do you feel about this? But instead just kind of like vibing or feeling the vibe of the party. Or do you guys think that a good DM is somebody that actually stops the game at the end, or maybe at the end of a session says like, how do you feel? How do you feel? How do you feel?
I definitely wouldn't stop the flow during the session.
Right.
It'd definitely be a conversation to have after the session. You probably do both. Like when you think it's like maybe it's your first time running a giant combat, and at the end, or maybe you notice a few things that players were getting distracted, or you're kind of like, oh, what do you think I could do to make the giant combats more exciting for everybody, so you're not getting distracted or
Right,
bored
it's
or
like
whatever.
everybody was focusing on killing the giant elf, but I noticed you were on your phone watching Bridget B videos. Like, what can I do to entice you into this?
It's gonna be hard to pull that person away from Bridget B videos.
Maybe you just have to act the way that Bridget B acts.
Because
Oh,
the
wow.
performance is her best.
Her performance is what makes her her. Check it out, guys. Bridget
it
B. Hashtag 40 facts on Bridget B.
Coming soon.
Yeah.
Oh, coming now.
Oh.
But yeah, I think after a while, I think asking the team is just like, you can't do it every session because then they're just going to be like, just whatever, dude, just do you.
Just
Yeah.
when you notice that maybe something didn't go right, or maybe the first session, or like every 5 or 10 sessions or whatever,
Right.
and then you kind of check in and make sure everybody's, because maybe you'll check in and be like, yeah, we're getting kind of bored of D&D and we want to switch to something else. Then
Right.
you know to kind of wrap it up. It doesn't even necessarily something that you as the DM did wrong. They're just kind of like, oh, D&D wasn't what we thought it was, or there's this other thing, new shiny thing that came out that we want to
So,
do.
with what you just said, D&D isn't what I thought it was. Is that 100% on the DM?
No.
Like if it's the fault on the DM.
Right, let's say you have a complete new batch of people that are going to be playing Dungeons and Dragons, and you're the DM for it. And after session 1, they're like, you know what, D&D isn't for me. Does that mean it's the DM's fault because they weren't enticing enough?
Well, I think it goes back to what we said where like...
You weren't a good enough DM, so it's like...
Well, I think it's like session 0. Like in session 0, you should have figured out exactly what your or what that player was going to want to play, because there's some things that just you can't get away from in D&D, and one of them is combat. Like combat can become boring because it's very like it's you and the DM talking for a little bit and then moving on to the next one.
Right,
And
you're taking turns. It's not
Yeah.
everybody...
And also, like, the rules are a thing that, like,
Yeah.
I notice a lot of new players are like, oh, it's my turn in combat. Can I do this, and this? And this is like, you can do that, but it's going to take, like, 3 turns.
Right.
It's like, oh, it's not as fun to just, unless saying I jump off the ledge and I stab this dude in the back and I do a roll and I stab this other guy. And it's like, you can do all that, but it's going to take a few turns.
Right, unless you're like level 20. Then you could probably do all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if somebody actually says like that, I don't like that aspect of D&D, then in that situation it's like, well, then you don't like D&D.
Yeah.
Because that is part of D&D. But if you have a person who doesn't mind the combat phase, but wishes that there was more like role playing, then it might be your fault. But that's something that you should have figured out before and you kind of know.
Yeah. And it's also, like, something that you, if that specific instance was what it was, I'd be like, give it another shot, and then talk to all the other players too and be like, we're going to try to role play a little more, because
Now, when
just
you tell them to give it another try, like as you as the DM, or do you take another person to come in and be that DM?
same DM. And then, I mean, I don't think anybody's going to have a hard and strict opinion on it after one session. Like, it'll probably take a little while for somebody to be like, okay, this really isn't for me.
Yeah. That does bring up another thing too. Like a good DM or the best DM is going to understand that they have a certain type of player that they just naturally cater towards, and finding someone that maybe favors a certain type of gameplay more so than others. It's not a negative towards the DM or even the players, just that sometimes those worlds don't match.
Yeah.
Because we have a friend in the group that is for sure a murder hobo. Having him in a session where it's high role playing, it just wouldn't be fun for him.
Yeah.
But that's not something that's against the DM, whoever the DM is
Right.
going to be. That's just the player has that affinity towards killing things.
More the
And raping
gamey
things.
side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I don't care what story you have. I just want to kill.
Yeah.
Just want to bend things over.
See it more of like a game, like I
Yeah.
kill things, get experience, level
Yeah.
up.
It's
get
like
gear.
he sees it as combat is the game. The role playing aspect is just the boring stuff in between.
Yeah.
Yeah, when he pulls out his phone.
Yeah. Some people are like that. Some people enjoy the combat more. Some people enjoy the role play more. And as a DM, if you have multiple different kind of people in your group,
Yeah.
you kind of have to strike a balance.
What is that balance? Like when you're making a session, it's like how many combats do you have per how many like scenarios of role playing?
I think it depends on the party. But also, I do think that a good DM or the best DM does not get bogged down in combat. I think combat should last at most like a couple. Like, I don't think somebody should push it to have combat be the entire session. I made that mistake, and I regret it every time I think about it. Of just having you guys just sit there for an entire like 3 hours in combat. That must have been.
When did that happen?
It was when we were defending the town against the orcs.
Yeah.
Oh,
But
I didn't see that as combat the whole time because it was waves.
Yeah, there was
You gave us
downtime.
time to prepare,
I did.
and yeah.
So, and I agree with you for the most part. I think certain combats, like big, like scale-wise combats,
Sieges,
might take the whole
yeah.
session. And sometimes, like, characters do things that you don't expect, and that prolongs combat, or like they try to talk to the guy, and then maybe that works for a few rounds, and then things fall apart. Or I don't think it's necessarily inherently bad if combat runs a certain amount of time, but definitely keeping combat quick. I think not only as a DM but as a player, like, know what you're doing, and maybe as a DM you gotta kind of like 30 seconds. You get each person gets 30 seconds on their turn, and after that you're done,
Yeah.
to try to like speed things up.
Especially if you're trying to be realistic, because it's like if you're fighting an orc and you've stabbed this orc like 20 times, it's like, okay, why isn't he dying?
Mhm.
Like he
Yeah.
should. This combat should have ended like 5 turns ago.
Unless he's a giggle orc.
That's true.
A giggle orc.
A giggle orc. Yeah. That does bring up another thing too, that I think we can boil this down to having variety in your encounters,
Yeah.
which is I think something that most DMs try to do, but only the best DMs do it well. Because it would suck if you're just like, here, I'll give you a puzzle for you to solve for this encounter. Next encounter, it's another puzzle.
Yeah.
It's just like a different setup, but it's still just a puzzle.
Right.
And even if a simple example, like you're going into a goblin cave, don't just put like 5 goblins in every room they have to fight. Like, differentiate the goblins, give them some beasts that they've tamed, or a lich overlord or something that's commanding them. Make it interesting, so you're not just like, okay, let's go into this room and kill some goblins, and let's go to the next room and kill some goblins.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same thing with story arcs, because there have been situations where like one story arc feels identical to the other story arc, and I understand that you can boil down most story arcs to like a hunting, like you're trying to either bring something to somebody or you're trying to like find something, but for the most part, like having different story arcs and a variety in the story arcs is really important.
Different goals and
yeah.
obstacles and stuff.
Yeah. So keeping it, keeping a good variety, I think, is key to a good DM or the best DM.
Yeah. And again, I think the most important thing to being a good DM is knowing when your party is ready to move on.
Yeah.
Because all these, like, okay, I finished my story arc, but why are we still focusing on my character? It's like, you have other characters, or combat is like over, why are we still going in initiative order? Like, what's going to happen?
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
It's like you killed the big bad, but you're still going in initiative order. It's like, why?
And yeah, that does bring up a good point too, of like a good DM or the best DM is going to know the rules.
Because it's like, yeah, you might be ready to surprise them with something else, but keeping them in initiative order, it's like they're expecting it. It's like, okay, combat's over. What do you guys do?
Yeah.
And then you bring in the next.
The Rancor.
Yeah.
Yeah. But definitely DM should have some semblance of the rules. So, and like that kind of goes into like preparing, like being prepared for a session. Because if you don't come in knowing the basis of the rules or have all your combats in like planned out and stuff, then you're just wasting your players' time. If every time something happens, you gotta like dig through rule books and kind of find the rules or find the monster or find whatever.
Right. It's like, obviously you got a whole freaking book to memorize, and nobody's gonna know the whole thing. But still, like, if somebody pauses to look something up, or it's not their fault. They just weren't expecting it because it is a lot to remember, and at the same time, there's a whole bunch of like stuff you can homebrew.
And also, a lot of times, your players might initiate combat that you never expected them to. Like,
it's like, oh, they're gonna meet the blacksmith. Oh, they're attacking the blacksmith.
yeah,
Like,
hold on, let me get some stats for the blacksmith.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should still, though, as a good DM, be okay with trying to find those things in the book, because we've experienced a situation where like somebody threw a monster at us that doesn't fit the actual rules within the book, and I think a good DM, if you're not going to, you don't have to go by the rules that are set or the stats within the monster manual, but a good DM still respects the fact that this is a game and that those monsters do exist in the book. So facing a monster that is like I don't know, an orc, don't treat him like he's something else in the book.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah. So like using the actual stats within the book is kind of important. And if not, and if you're homebrewing, keep it consistent throughout the entire time, I guess.
Yeah, consistency is key, because if your party is expecting something and for some reason it's not what they were ready for, that not only, if it doesn't make sense story-wise, it's like, okay, so you're just changing things whenever you want.
Yeah, because it causes friction, especially if like somebody owns the monster manual and knows like a certain thing has this many hit points, and then it goes far beyond that. Like, I get it, there are homebrew situations, but there's something else here, and that causes friction.
Yeah, because whenever you break trust is really hard to regain.
And that's the key between dungeon masters. Like, the best dungeon masters trust their players, and the players trust their dungeon masters.
Yeah.
Having a good relationship is like the most important thing between players and dungeon masters.
That's why after every session you got to kiss, just to make sure you're still friends.
Yeah. On the lips.
Of course.
Like Bridget B. would. Another thing that kind of tags off of that is the opposite of don't throw like a vampire at a level 1 party, because then that's also very annoying. Not just because like the vampire is going to murder the entire party, but also if the vampire doesn't murder the party and the party knows that the vampire was like OP, then it becomes a situation of like, well, like they're not really going off of the book, which I did. I did that mistake the first time that I DM'd for you guys. I threw what was it?
A roper.
A roper at you guys. The roper was challenge level like 7, I think. Like it should have murdered you. Yeah. It should have murdered you guys within the first hit, but it didn't. And it wasn't that bad, but it is like a rookie mistake that I did.
Which is another thing too. Again, where you got to know your party. If it's a new party, they might not know what a roper is.
Yeah.
But if you have a veteran in your party, and it's like they know exactly what a roper is, what his weaknesses are and strengths, it's like you have to also believe that veteran player will play to his character and not to what he himself knows.
Yeah, because we were also in a situation where a DM threw a Sphinx at us, and we knew we weren't gonna survive, but we didn't survive, but like we did survive. So then that loses trust in the DM, which goes back to the whole idea of like the best DM is somebody that you can trust.
Yeah,
and kind of on the back of that idea is like a DM and player relationship should not be adversarial.
Right. But at the same time, the opposite shouldn't be true. But focusing on the adversary part first.
I don't think it should feel like it's DM versus players. It should be like everybody's on the same team, and you guys want to make a good story and want to have fun with the time that you've invested to play with each other. So I think an adversarial relationship can be.
It's not you versus the DM. It's
the players versus the obstacles that the DM is set in front of you.
Yeah. It's like, don't hate the player, hate the game.
Well, I mean, what I mean by that is like
exactly that.
As a DM, invest in your characters and like want them to succeed.
Yeah, your players.
Like you want their stories to end happily.
Like, I want you to get Excalibur, but to get him, this is all your obstacles.
And that doesn't mean as a DM you have to pull punches or like make sure that they have a happy ending. Like, you should be realistic with the world and with the obstacles that you set in front of them.
Right.
But like, if a monster that you put in front of them kills one of your players, you should feel something like, oh crap, like I really like that character. This sucks. Like, I mean, it's nothing I can do. I rolled the dice and he's dead. But like, I mean, you can fudge dice and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But that also kind of can break trust.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it goes back though to knowing the rules and knowing what challenge that monster is actually going to put out towards the party. So if you know exactly that this red dragon is going to be a good challenge for the party, but it's not guaranteed like cannon fodder, and it's not guaranteed like something that's going to completely obliterate them, then yeah, you have to have a good DM knows that stat, I guess. To prove or to post the challenge to the player, but then at the same time not make it too easy for them.
Right. So then that whole dice roll thing comes into play here. Are you a good DM if you fudge dice rolls for the narrative, or if you let them roll and work off of that?
I think both instances you can be a good DM. It just depends on how often you fudge dice rolls.
I think that if you do fudge dice rolls, then you can't rely on that. Like if you do fudge dice rolls and you do it every single session or every single combat, or even not a combat, but just regular interactions, then you're doing something wrong.
Or every time one of your players is down, you're like, oh, I don't want them to die, so I'm going to fudge dice rolls so they don't die.
Yeah.
That's not good, because that takes away all the stakes.
Yeah.
I like steak.
Yeah, me too.
But honestly, I think that a person or a DM that doesn't fudge dice rolls is just as... Like, I think that would be a better route to take than somebody that does.
Yeah, there's absolutely nothing wrong with never fudging a dice.
Yeah.
Because it goes back to the whole idea of, like, the best DM is going to be so creative that, like, they're going to be able to... what were we talking about? Yeah, that thing you guys couldn't pronounce.
Improvisation.
Yeah. They're going to be able to improvise based on whatever dice roll you throw out there.
Are you going to improvise out of a death, though? Like, let's say you have a monster and you kill or you don't kill somebody, but you bring them down to rolling death saves. And you know, in that monster's eyes, he's not going to attack the rest of the army. He's going to finish off the one that's dying. Do you finish off that person? Or do you go for the rest of the party?
I think you finish off the person, and it goes back to what Docile Creature was saying, that you already know, because you did such a good job at world building, that this monster would finish off the player.
Yeah.
And in that situation, because I do disagree with Docile Creature when he says that it shouldn't be you versus the DM or the player versus DM, because at the end of the day, it should be, right? That's like the whole point of it. But I do agree that...
Your face. Your face right now is just like...
No, I'm just...
Yeah, but I do agree that it should be the DM creating a puzzle, and that puzzle is not necessarily a legit puzzle, but like the puzzle is the monster that they're trying to overcome.
The reason I say that it shouldn't be the DM versus the players is because if it was that, the DM would win every time. The DM has the power to throw whatever monsters, whatever puzzles they want. In combat, I get what you're saying. Like you're playing, the DM is playing the monsters versus the players that are playing the players. So in that sense, yes, it is players versus DM. But like in the grand story, the villain of the campaign isn't the DM; it's the villain,
Monsters
the
that
NPC, whatever.
Yeah.
That's
Okay. All right. I just don't like that saying, because then the reverse is almost, it has to be the same, right? Where it's like it's not the player versus DM, but it is.
In the game, player versus the obstacles.
Right.
That the DM set.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So maybe if we switch it up and we say it should be the player versus the obstacles, never
the player versus the DM.
Yeah. Okay. We'll do that. Okay. Yeah. Cool.
Or player versus the world.
Which the world's created by the DM. So it's not that I'm broke because of life. It's I'm broke because of God.
Other way around.
Right.
Yeah.
I get you. But that's what I'm trying to convey.
Yeah.
Quote unquote God.
Yeah.
If you believe in that. Do you believe in your DM?
That goes back to the whole trust thing.
Yeah.
Right? Which we don't have in real life because he's never come down. But
come down or come up?
Both maybe.
Hey.
Hail Satan. Sorry.
Now, what was what was my rebuttal to what you said? I forgot what I said earlier.
You said he was wearing a stupid hat, so you
Yeah,
don't
he
want
is
to
wearing.
trust him.
That's true.
It's not a stupid hat, okay?
Sorry,
It's a blue hat that looks black.
it's a blue and black hat.
Dang, I forgot. I had like a good point to your rebuttal, and then I said, "Oh, never mind. Continue."
Was it
yours.
player versus DM?
Yeah. So what you were trying to say? Let me see if I can remember,
Mhm.
because you said the opposite could be the same
Right.
of
Because whatever we were talking about now, I said the opposite is also true.
yeah of oh Jesus, now I lost it too.
I had this thought in my mind, so I'll just come out and say it.
Mhm.
So I said, you should always, or I think you were saying that if the DM is prepared, he's got a whole story for the party to follow.
Mm-hmm.
But what if the DM is always like, oh, I don't know, just what do you guys want to do? Is that a good DM?
No.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So the DM always has to have a concise focus.
100% improvisation, I don't think is a good DM. That's just, you don't prep. Like, you have to have something to, like, a skeleton.
So, like, if you go into a town and you say, okay, so this is everything that's in the town, what do you want to do?
That's fine. Because the DM's fleshed out that town, ideally.
But if you just start the session, all right, what do you guys want to do today? That's way too...
There's a certain kind of play style that, it's called sandbox, which is why I said sandbox earlier, a game where you put somebody in a setting and then see what they want to do. Like, just dangle hooks in front of them, a bunch of different ones, and then see which ones they grab onto, and that's the direction you go.
So, like, let's say before the session starts, you ask the party, what do you guys want to do? And somebody says, oh, I want to slay a dragon. Now the DM has to create that.
Not necessarily. Well, that can be a goal that the player has. It doesn't necessarily have to be done in
That
session one.
Yeah.
But like keep that in mind. So like in the future, you're gonna put a dragon in front of this person because you know that one of their goals is to slay a dragon. And which is another one of my points that I've written down is take notes and learn your characters. So if your characters express interest in something, take note of that, so you can use it down the line or somehow tie it into somebody else's interest and goals. And something that I started to do in session zeros, or I've never done a session zero, so as the game goes, is I give somebody a sheet and that basically has questions about their character that they might not have thought about, like what their short-term goals are, what their long-term goals are. And
If you got access to the wish spell, what would you wish for?
No. What their greatest strengths and weaknesses are that aren't mechanical. Those are the questions that I ask. So that it forces the players to actually like think
About
more than
who
just like
they're-
statistically and what spells you pick and weapons you want.
So what if you're playing against a player, like we said, that's all about like being just a murder hobo? I don't care about my background. I'm just here to fight. How do you combat that? Where it's like, oh, where were you born? You know, what are your goals? It's like, where was I born? Doesn't matter. What are your goals? Fighting. Being the best. How do you combat that?
I think that's something that you'd have to kind of either accept as a DM. If like you're trying to run this style of game and this player does not want that, you got to have a conversation.
Okay, because the next thing I was going to say, is it ever okay for the DM to set up the backstory or any type of lore for another person's character?
I think it's okay, yeah.
Like if you have a player like that that says, I don't care, just come up with it for me, then sure, just like, this makes sense for your character, this is where you came from.
But a good DM will also understand that, like, not to take anything serious if that person doesn't or ignores the background that the DM just created.
So if you're saying, I want to be the murder hobo, make up my background, and then the DM says, well, in your background, you're a murder hobo because your whole family got killed, and that's all you know after that.
And then, like, while he's playing, he's like, oh, what about my sister in Chicago?
Right.
Then in that situation, you just got to bite the bullet and be like, yeah, your sister in Chicago.
And that's kind of like improvisation. Yes, and is like the whole mantra for improv. So if your player or your DM throws something at you, just kind of take it and run with it. Don't be like, no, that's not what happened, actually.
So a good DM never says no.
Not true, no.
Oh, I thought I had you on that one.
But in most cases, kind of like just learn what your players want, learn what your characters enjoy, and make sure to incorporate those things. I think that's a good DM, or the best DM, like cares about their players, wants them to succeed, knows what they want to do in order to succeed. Yeah.
So if you notice your DM isn't doing that, is it ever okay for you to say, hey,
you suck?
Yeah.
No, don't have an expectation that your DM is going to be the best DM you've ever had. Depending on how much experience they have, they're not going to be Matt Mercer. They're not going to be the other awesome DMs that you've seen on the internet, because that's like, people have different ways of DMing. You learn through years of DMing.
Yeah, like if you've never played D&D and all you've known is Critical Role, and you're expecting your first session to be just like a session of Critical Role, you are not ready
Something
to
similar
play.
happened to me. It wasn't Critical Role, but a different YouTube series that I would watch, and it was very role play heavy, and like I was like, man, I want to play this so bad. So when I started running my first game, I wanted it to be that. But one of my players was kind of like the Murder Hobo, thought of it as a video game, and one of the other ones was kind of like neutral, kind of in the middle, wanted to play a game but also a little role play. And then another person was like all in role play with like how I was, and it just wasn't what I thought it was, and it didn't meet my expectations. And well, that's fine. Like, you're not going to be able to. It's not, your vision isn't going to come 100% to fruition because other people at the table have influence on the game. It's not all 100% DM. It's not 100% player. So it's not going to be anybody's ideal game unless you get really lucky and everybody's on the exact same page.
It's like we all want you to DM our D&D session, but that D&D session has to be all of us and Bridget be in the same room.
We can't be wearing clothes. But I think what you're trying to say is that, in a way, the DM has to be a blank slate. That has to be moldable.
I wouldn't say a blank slate, because a blank slate would mean
With
whatever the
background
party
information,
wants.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Be malleable.
Yeah.
And the players too.
Putty.
But I think, would you put it more towards the DM or the players that have to...
Who puts more effort is what you're saying?
Yeah, I think the DM should be the one that puts more effort, just because he is the master of the world.
He is a god.
And at the end of the day, like, people are coming over to your house to hang out. And you should respect that. And they're giving you your time to live in your world.
Well, not nowadays, of course. Obviously.
Right, because everybody's 6 feet apart. And yeah.
Just like we are right now.
Oh, yeah. We're doing this in different places.
Yeah. I'm in Alberta.
Whoa.
Is that even in the U.S.?
No.
No.
Oh, okay.
It's
but
Canada, right?
Yeah.
I mean, of course it's Canada.
You're there. What was I saying?
That you think the DM should put in
More
Oh,
effort.
yeah. What do you guys think about that?
Yes.
Cool.
just in the fact that they have to do more prepping more often.
Thank you for that. He said cool.
Cool.
Well, yeah, because I don't get you guys agreeing with me that very often, so I take it.
But I think it's definitely like a two-person thing. Like, you have to learn to mesh with each other.
Everybody is putty in each other's hands.
And after a few sessions or maybe a few months of playing with each other, you kind of learn how the game's going to be run and how the players like
It's
to
like,
run the game.
I know Docile Creature is going to take the reins on this part of the session, so I as the DM, can kind of step back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And those are our tips. They're kind of all over the place, but those are our tips of what makes a good DM. Comment down below. Let us know what you guys think makes a good DM. Because we didn't talk about brie and pizza, which is I think is something that we should.
That's on the
mentioned.
players.
It is.
No.
If you're
You're
putting time
inviting
and
people
effort,
to your house and you're not gonna say, "Hey, you
As
want
a
something to
host,
eat?"
you should provide.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I disagree.
I don't know.
No, let's
man.
fight about this for 15 more minutes.
But I mean, that's up to you guys in the comment section. Let us know what you guys think about the Pizzagate thing.
wait, not the Pizzagate thing. Pizzagate 2.0.
Yeah, and don't forget to subscribe, tell your friends about the channel, and if you guys have any suggestions for other topics that you guys would like us to vaguely discuss, please comment down in the comment section below. With that said, this was Gershwan.
Docile Creature.
And the Sound Alchemist, and we'll see you in the next one.